Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I became very interested in education policy as a means towards economic opportunity and lifting people up. I got involved in a network of charter schools which are focused on serving low-income communities, inner-city communities, back in my early 20s, and started volunteering for them. I initially did so because of my intellectual inclination towards the policy reforms that help provide opportunity, but I also started volunteering as a tutor, and the connection I built tutoring the kids was deeply moving. And there was, I remember there was one kid early on who, again, from a very poor community in the Bronx, and he said, he was explaining his experience at the school, and he said, before I got into this school, I just thought about girls, I just thought about hanging out with friends and goofing off and doing marginal stuff. But then when I joined this school, I began to think about the future. I saw hope for myself, and for 7 years I spent Saturday mornings tutoring in that school, and that's part of the reason why I chose to be on the education committee. Because in the aftermath of COVID, seeing 20-30% proficiency in some of our inner city schools in this state is just unacceptable to me. And I have seen firsthand in low-income communities how a great education can provide opportunity, can provide hope. And I think every kid deserves that. And so we need high-quality schools for everybody, no matter their station in life. That's a matter of all sorts of policy levers, but it starts with high standards. It starts with the belief that every kid can succeed. And I believe it's the obligation of this community, of this state, to provide a great education to every single kid in need. We can do that, and that's why I joined the Education Committee, and that's what I'll be focused on in future terms.
Thank you. Rachel.
My family and I moved to Greenwich from New York City over 20 years ago when our twins double stroller couldn't fit in our elevator. We raised our 4 daughters here, and I couldn't imagine living anywhere else. When my daughters were at Parkway, I joined the Parkway PTA, and later I joined the Board of Kids in Crisis and was involved with Kids in Crisis, and also the board of the Greenwich Audubon Center. I work to support our children and our environment because I believe strongly in both of these causes. More recently, I served 2 terms on the RTM in District 10 under the chairmanship of Jerry Anderson. And we worked on a sense of the meeting resolution for a fire station and better fire coverage in Northwest Greenwich. And I worked collaboratively with fellow members in District 10 and also fellow RTM members across town to achieve a goal of increased public safety in our town. This is something that I believe strongly in, and working collaboratively, adopting and listening to multiple perspectives on an issue and coming to conclusions that work for all. And finally, I'm a triathlete, and as a result, I know how to work hard and how to persevere, and I will bring those to the table if I'm elected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question. As a coastal community, climate change will affect our town directly due to rising water levels and increasingly frequent extreme weather events. What will you do at the state level to help our town secure funds and prepare for these future realities? Kimberly Fiorello.
When we look at the challenges that we face as a community, whether it's climate change or any other thing that's heavy on our minds, the thing that helps us to meet those challenges is the ability to innovate and come up with solutions. And that ability to innovate and come up with solutions comes because you have the freedom to think and the resources to invest, and you have time to yourselves. That is what is lacking. The innovation and the ability to grow is what is lacking in our economy. And that's key to everything. Everything, all the problems that we each individually feel bears so heavy on our souls as we look to the future. All of that is more possible if we had a booming economy in our state. Now, at the federal level, there is an economic storm brewing, and people out there are really concerned. They're seeing their savings dwindle away, whether it's from inflation. Already your inflation has taken away 8% of your purchasing power. And then you've seen your pension whittled down by the stock market falling. These all weigh heavy, and when that's happening, you can't solve the problems that you care so deeply about. So what do we have to do in our economy? Is Connecticut's economy booming? As much as we really want to believe that it is, I'm really sorry to say that we have to look at economics with a really plain and straight view so that we can tackle these issues. Our economy is not booming. We have had no income growth for the people. And I hope that really resonates, because no income growth means you can't invest in those ideas that you care so much about. And I seek to reverse that so we can have a booming and growing economy that can solve all the problems we face. Thank you.
Okay, on climate change, Rachel Khanna.
John, as you said, climate change is the defining challenge of our era. The last 4 years were the hottest on record. In the summer, 87% of Connecticut experienced a drought. And again, as you said, sea levels are rising, as are severe storms, which we can see every time there's a storm here and the trees fall and roads are shut down. By 2050, 61% of Connecticut will be in flood-prone areas. We passed great legislation in this last session, but we need to do more. Unfortunately, my opponent voted against every piece of legislation addressing climate change. I was endorsed by both the Sierra Club and the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. I'm committed to addressing the root causes of climate change and ensuring that the 149th District has the resources to face these risks. Thank you.
John, did you say me?
I did say you, Ryan.
We need an energy portfolio in this state and in this country that is three things: as reliable as possible, as affordable as possible, and as clean as possible. We also need to deal with environmental impacts of a changing climate. I co-sponsored legislation called the Climate and Coastal Resiliency Bill, that passed into law in a bipartisan fashion that directs DEEP, which is the Environmental Protection Agency of the state, to dedicate more resources to coastal resiliency. And that's especially important for my district, which is a coastal district. So I also sat in a meeting a few weeks ago down at Todd's Point with Senator Murphy and other stakeholders locally and local governments to try to discuss what a plan of action would look like to dedicate more resources to coastal communities to ensure that we're protected from any environmental fallout of storms, flooding, and so on. So I think that was a positive piece of legislation that I was proud to be involved in. I also co-sponsored legislation that passed into law which permits the power plant, Millstone, the nuclear plant in southeastern Connecticut, to expand beyond its current scope. It's the reliable, clean, base load source of energy for the state. It provides about 40% of the state's electricity. That's especially important in years to come as we see energy costs go up. And it's obviously also clean. So ensuring that we have policies which encourage safe, reliable, and affordable nuclear technology are equally important. I spent about half my career in the renewable energy space, so I think I understand both the challenges environmentally as well as economically of expanding and scaling reliable, clean, and affordable energy. I also am a champion of community solar, which will reduce the cost of generating solar in our state make it more affordable as an intermittent source of energy. So we need an all-of-the-above clean energy strategy for this state.
Thank you, Ryan. Trevor, your turn.
Hi. Okay, I hope you guys all know that Fairfield County has the worst air quality in the tri-state area. Let that sink in. I have a sister who has severe asthma, severe. The incumbent voted against the Clean Air Act. Voted against the Clean Air Act. He voted against EV charging stations. He voted against, he received a grade, I would call this a failing grade, of 55% for the Environmental Committee. He voted against infrastructure to improve our state parks, right? So we need real plans. And what I'd like to see happen in Hartford is every town builds their own plan based on their geography. And in that plan would have bike paths and land conservation and how to reduce their carbon footprint and how to put solar panels on town buildings. How we can, each of us in our own areas, figure this out, because this is one of the most pressing issues. And if you're a young person today, you are very concerned about this. I live at Palmer Point. I can almost reach out and touch 95. I can hear it, and I look down, I can see the water, and sea levels are rising. I am very aware of how important this issue is, and I would like to see us work on EV charging or more electric vehicles. I don't know how many people in here would like to have one. I think it'd be great.
They're toxic.
Anyway, I believe that we can do better, and as a community, when we plan and put our heads together and we come up with our own local plan, again, I'm very much for local authority, that we can solve a lot of these problems, and we support and we honor the next generation. And if we don't do that, we're hurting our kids and our grandkids, and I don't want us to do that. I'm committed to doing the opposite.
Thank you. Next question is on gun control. Connecticut's assault weapons ban, which was passed in 2013 in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy, is being challenged in court. The plaintiffs claim violation of the Second Amendment. This case comes in the wake of the Supreme Court's June findings limiting restrictions, thereby making it easier to obtain a license to carry a concealed weapon in New York. Where do you stand on the direction of these cases, and specifically Connecticut's semi-automatic weapons ban?
I would do everything in my power to strengthen any kind of gun laws. I was devastated by Sandy Hook. Is there anybody here who actually thinks we should have assault weapons in people's hands?
Yes.
Put your hand up. Okay, because that is how places like Uvalde, Sandy Hook, we end up with those horrible, horrible situations. I never want to see that happen. There's a reason why people come to Connecticut. It's because we're safe and our crime is down. And when I hear these people tell us that we are doom and gloom and things are really off the rails, they're wrong. Crime is down. Across the board, about 6%. Auto thefts, etc. Oh, please. I mean, you guys, do you want me to really pull up all the stats right now? Seriously.
Yeah, from where? From where? From where?
All right, the crowd's going to have to keep it down.
Yeah. Anyway, I am a mental health worker, and I do hear often that the issue is mental health and the wrong people have the guns at the wrong time. I actually do think I believe we could strengthen our red flag laws by making mental health workers part of the red flag laws and mandated reporters. I was never taught to do this, but I do it now. When somebody sounds like they might be wanting to hurt themselves or others, I actually start to assess for guns, ownership, etc. It's pretty scary out there. I'd rather see less guns and guns in the right hands, not the wrong hands. So we need to work on this, and we cannot let our state turn into a place where there's assault weapons right and left. And if you look at red states, their crime levels are way off the rails.
Oh, like Chicago? Like New York City?
Please stop yelling out of the crowd, please. Sir,
Sorry.
thank you.
Anyway, I will wrap up with, I know we can do better. There's more to be done, and safe gun laws and common gun storage is important, and we keep needing to work on this in the state of Connecticut.
When I heard news of a lawsuit by 2 members of the Conservative caucus to reverse our assault weapons ban, I was in shock. Assault weapons are the weapons of choice for school shooters and don't belong in the hands of civilians. The 2013 law banning assault rifles passed with strong bipartisan support. I've been a longtime supporter of Connecticut Against Gun Violence and received their endorsement, as well as being identified as a gun sense candidate of distinction by Moms Demand Action. And I proudly earned an F from the NRA. I support responsible gun ownership, funds to take illegal guns off the streets, and common sense gun safety measures such as raising awareness about safe storage and red flag laws, limiting the age to purchase long guns to 21, and limiting bulk purchases of guns. We all want our communities to be safe and to know that when our kids go to school, they will be safe, and I'm committed to making that happen.
Ryan.
It's a very important question because in the past 2 years, Connecticut has seen a 35% increase in homicides all across our state. Any other statistics are probably of little comfort to the family of Henrik Adelsky from New Britain or Will Vasquez from Hampton, who were killed because the policies of this state government have not been changed in order to keep criminals off the street and guns out of the hands of criminals who shouldn't have them in the first place. We have very strict gun laws in this state. That's not going to change. We also need to enforce those laws in order to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and people who are getting preservation. The 2020 police bill, which was passed along party lines in the dead of night without a full public hearing, defanged our police, our law enforcement, from actually keeping people safe. It took away important proactive policing policies like consent searches, which were responsible for taking hundreds of illegal guns off the street. And when we, in the Republican caucus, where we were about a third of the entire legislature, have repeatedly introduced legislation in order to bring back those proactive policing policies at the behest of the suggestions of our law enforcement, we were continuously ignored by the leadership of the state legislature, who apparently is willing to watch this rise in shootings, this rise in crimes, including in places like Stamford, which I represent. That's unacceptable. We need to support law enforcement to enforce our laws. That's why I am proud to have the endorsement. That's why I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police, of the Stamford Police Association, and other police organizations in my recent campaigns. And it's also why we need to stop the Democrats from winning a supermajority in the state legislature, where the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee has a bill proposed before the legislature to ban school resource officers across our state. That's unacceptable. We need to fight against it.
Thank you, Ryan. Kimberly. Okay.
Nobody wants gun violence. And the first time I got to talk to police officers, they're under so much duress with the attacks on their profession. But when I went to go visit police officers in Bridgeport, because they said, do you want to know where real crime is coming from? Because it is coming to Greenwich, and we know it is. We've seen these attacks on the streets of Greenwich, on the avenue, whether our cars are getting stolen off of our driveways, or we see our business districts becoming less safe. And we don't hear about all of that. But when I went to Bridgeport, the police officers there are working a task force to get illegal guns off our streets. And they need full, proper funding, which we don't do under the Democrat rules. The police officers there they showed me videos of the kinds of attacks that they have. The criminals are so incredibly emboldened by the laws that we're passing. And the laws we're passing is not only the police accountability bill, but after they were done with that, we passed automatic erasure, which is the idea that they will automatically erase felony records and bypass a process by which the victims are included in the process of erasing records. We also passed the recreational marijuana bill, which made it so that the police cannot stop vehicles that are so obviously inhaling, ingesting, or smoking marijuana. That does not keep us safe as well. We also passed a mandatory education curriculum, the Black and Latino Studies for public schools. And this curriculum, unfortunately, includes 6 days of systemic racism study and Black Lives Matter, which on it thematically are anti-police, and police officers are seeing their children come home learning these ideas. This is the environment in which we're trying to keep the public safe. Let's think about that. Thank you.
Okay, on to the next question. With the Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade earlier this summer, there has been a wave of states around the country where abortion is no longer available. Connecticut took a step this session to increase abortion providers and to protect them from out-of-state litigation. How does this affect our state, and what is your position on this new legislation? Khanna.
As the parent of 4 young women, the recent SCOTUS decision was a blow, because all I could think about was what the future had in store for my 4 daughters. Fortunately, we passed the Reproductive Freedom Defense Act, which protected our right to abortion care, as well as that of women coming from other states and providers in this state. But my opponent voted against this, as well as a bill to prevent limited service pregnancy centers from disseminating deceptive information to prevent women from seeking abortion services. We need to remain vigilant to make sure that no laws are passed that threaten women's rights to make their own reproductive decisions in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, after the Supreme Court ruling, the executive director of the Family Institute of Connecticut said that the goal would be to repeal the 1990 law that codified Roe v. Wade in Connecticut. I was endorsed by Planned Parenthood Votes and Connecticut Now, and I will fight for greater equity for women and to protect women and the access to the care we need and choose for ourselves.
Ryan Fazio.
There is broad bipartisan consensus in Connecticut that we need to keep abortion legal in the state of Connecticut. That's my position as well. There are the leader of the Republican leader of the Senate, the Republican leader of the House, and the Republican candidate for governor also believe that. So there should be clarity across the aisle for all citizens that abortion will remain legal in the state of Connecticut. We should also maintain high health and safety standards across the board. That was the concern with HB 5414, and it's the reason that 17 Democrats voted with most Republicans against the bill. For context, there's almost no cases in the state legislature where 17 Democrats vote against a bill that their leadership supports. The reason is because at least 6 independent healthcare organizations testified critically against the bill, whereas none testified in favor of the bill. The concern was that by lowering the health and safety standards for surgical abortions, we would put more women's health at risk, especially poorer women. And it was mostly female legislators, Democratic female legislators from cities who were the ones who crossed the aisle in order to vote against the bill. Beyond that, I submitted legislation at the beginning of the term, before any Supreme Court litigation, that would expand and improve access to contraception across the state of Connecticut in a manner that was tried in a few other states with great success. It's also important that we prevent unplanned pregnancies to the greatest extent possible. So I think there's common sense, bipartisan solutions on this issue. Let's keep abortion legal in the state of Connecticut. Let's maintain high health and safety standards, and let's improve access to contraception.
Kimberly Fiorello.
My position on abortion is definitely informed by being a mother of 4 children, going through 4 pregnancies, being a woman as well. And it hasn't changed since President Clinton said safe, legal, and rare. In my 2 years of being in Hartford, I don't know one Republican legislator